You're listening to the Casting Shadows podcast. This episode was recorded on the road, so expect strange noises. Sorry about that. Let's open this episode with our one and only call-in, this time from Jason of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, calling in reference to the previous episode, which was a ridiculously long time ago, where we talked about running games in sequence with multiple GMs.
Hey, Jason here. Sorry I took so long to get this to you. I meant to record this the other day when I listened to the episode. But as far as rotating GMs goes, we kind of were more like what the Grognard Files did, where everybody kind of had their own game that they ran. So we didn't share that many games. The closest thing to maybe troop-style play or rotating GMs was probably Marvel Superheroes. We tended to play those modules and just use the heroes that were presented in the modules because they were kind of tailored towards certain heroes, the published modules for that. And so, I mean, we created plenty of characters on our own with that game, but generally we weren't so worried about advancement in that game. That wasn't a big deal. And we were happy to play, you know, if a module was oriented towards the X-Men or orientated towards Fantastic Four, we would just play those characters in that module. And, you know, we did have different people run those. But for the most part, we each kind of ran our own game, so we never really did the rotating GM thing. I think it's a really interesting idea. I definitely would be interested in giving that a shot sometime, setting up the world and then having rotating GMs for that. I would really enjoy doing that, actually. And it wouldn't be that hard to do, like you say, and there are a number of settings where it would be pretty appropriate and pretty easy to do. I think the problem is there are a lot of people that just, believe it or not, at least in the circles that I move in, you know, almost everybody's a GM. Not everybody, but a lot of people are GMs, and a lot of them don't want to play. They just want a GM, and that's part of the issue. But I don't know. We'll have to see if we can drum some support up for this idea, this rotating GM thing up, and see how that goes. Thank you for your show. Really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for the call, Jason. I don't know if this episode ever will spark a lot of conversation in the background, but, you know, I do hope that it does. As I said in the episode on multiple GMs, it's really how I have gamed for my entire time as a gamer. And, you know, we're coming up on my 40th anniversary of that pretty soon. So that's a long time. It's my normal to share game mastering duties, whether that be each of us running different games, as you mentioned, or each of us sharing the same game but separate worlds, as I talked about, or each of us sharing the same game in the same world, as I also talked about. But so that's the way I see a healthy table where everyone gets a chance to play. But I hear you in that not everybody wants a chance to play, and that the notion of everybody at the table being a game master and wanting to run games of their own and wanting to have the opportunity to let other people play can in itself be a source of friction, which is interesting. And it's one of those things that we can talk about. And of course, my solution to it has always been, we just open up another night for gaming. But, you know, we can't always have that as a solution. Anyway, thanks again for the call-in, and I look forward to seeing what comes of your December episodes where we talk about deception. So I'm thinking about that as Decepper, which doesn't really flow trippingly off the tongue, but still, it's pretty cool. So I've already heard your first episode where you talk about spy movies and spy games, and put a call out for people with experience with Top Secret or Top Secret SI. So I hope a number of people call in, and you know, if you want to talk to me about Top Secret SI, I'm up for it anytime. Oh, and if you want to talk about live action runnings about on college campuses with games like Tag, the assassination game, which was also a movie, I'm up for that too. I have a pretty interesting story to relate about that. Anyway. As we mentioned at the top of the show, this next section was recorded in motion, in the car, on the highway, and so it comes complete with road noise and all that that entails. But hopefully, you'll ride along with me as I reflect on our new role-playing game experience, one which I'm playing with Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, and some other people that you may have seen me play with on YouTube, such as Ivan Mike 1968 of the Ivan Mike 1968 YouTube channel. And no, we don't refer to Ivan as Ivan Mike 1968 most of the time. Anyway, this next section is on the Corporia RPG and getting it ready to run on Discord. With the way things are going lately, I feel like I'm going to have to assemble this entire episode in the car. And I guess that's fine. I guess we can kind of bundle a variety of different ideas and concepts together under, Runeslinger's Reflections from the Road or something like that. Anyway, this segment of this kind of Frankenstein podcast episode is about a game that I've been slowly putting together for play on Discord. This will be my first time to run a game on Discord, and this is a new group made mostly of people that I've played with before, but who haven't played together either ever or for a very long time. So, that's kind of nice. So I've been wanting to run a campaign of Corporia, and I know that if you listen to this show, you also listen to the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. So you've heard Jason, the host at that show, talking about being a member of this group. So he's one of the people who is playing in it. In Corporia, its tagline was Knights in Shining Armani. And it's a near future kind of ambiguous dystopia utopia. It looks amazing, but it has some problems, and it has some deeper problems under the surface. And depending on, what strata of society you travel in, who you serve and who employs you, and where you yourself currently reside among the various layers of society, you'll have a varying awareness of some of the things that are going right and some of the things that are going wrong. It's a partly cyberpunk kind of game, and it's partly an investigative kind of game, and it's partly a kind of balls to the wall, rise up against the collapse of this, that, or the other thing kind of game. It has a good head for violence. It has a good head for social interaction. And I think it has a very interesting and useful approach to the relentless march of technology, and how what we can conceive of now as being cool future tech might never come to pass, or might seem quaint a lot faster than we had hoped. So I guess we'll start there. Corporia takes an approach to technology where development has been very uneven. So there are elements in the list of gear which seem very futuristic. Things like nanotechnology energy shields that have very portable batteries that can be worn like an arm bracer and then spring up and create a full body shield in front of the user, where charging and other energy requirements are not a concern. That's pretty cool. That's very high tech. That's very future tech. It's unlikely that in our in our run of the game that we're going to discover, like, oh, that's such an outdated idea. It actually came out like this. That kind of thing. It's very far future tech. But at the same time, there is a retro aesthetic caused by communication problems and energy broadcasting problems because of one of the main source elements in the game. And so communications technology should be very familiar to us. It's really not that much more advanced than ours, and it's definitely a design aesthetic rather than technological limitation or something like that, or a prediction problem by the author. It's that because of the conditions of this particular future, technology benefits from being bundled this way and is easier to sell this way and has this kind of cool retro vibe to it for the people who live in the world. And so you carry a portable phone around the same size and weight and experience as we do today. But it can be upgraded with contact lenses or glasses, which provide you with an AR experience. Or you can get an implant, which provides the same AR experience, complete with bone conduction audio and all that stuff. So there are people who are walking around who just use a phone, much like the way that we do today, for simple computing and for accessing programs in their own personal cloud, and for, of course, video and audio calling. But there are others who never take it out of their pocket. They're interacting in a VR environment, much like Meta would like us to do. So that's kind of interesting. Weapons, well, there are energy weapons, but there are also projectile weapons. And then when we start thinking about the weaponry, we start getting into more of the heart of the game. So let's shift our stance and talk about, who are you playing in Corporia? The cover of Corporia shows basically a knight standing in front of a futuristic city. A knight in shining armor. And inside, we find that the game itself is laid out very much like a corporate human resources or hiring document. And we see imagery of people in business suits with swords and or shields and or pistols or rifles. We see a very aggressive and cutthroat imagery, this corporate raider kind of imagery all the way through it. But is that who we're playing? No. The game sets you up in the core book to play operatives for a large corporation called Valiant, and specifically has you attached to or active members of its private militarized security company called The Watch. Members of that are called Watchmen. And there is a secretive group inside it. Not secretive in the sense that people don't know it exists. It's not covert in that sense. It's people don't know what they're really doing. And there is this specialized group called the Night's Watch. Because magic has returned to the world and it hasn't come back easily. It's been identified scientifically as distorted or chaotic energies, which have been dubbed the flux. Some people know about it, some people don't, some people care about it, some people don't. But it has affected technology, it has affected society, and it's definitely affecting people. The game refers to people who've been affected by the flux as cryptids because they turn into the sort of mysterious, urban fantasy monsters that you might expect. Everything from vampires and werewolves to some pretty creative and unpleasant other creatures. The Night's Watch does things like track these cryptids down and capture or exterminate them for the good of their clients. Because socially, the governments that we think of today have collapsed and left in their wake, corporate cooperative city-states. So the larger cities are held in kind of an Asian governmental fashion. The large area, or the large metropolitan area, is divided into districts, and those districts are governed by different corporations. And there are things like contracts for fire services, for medical services, and for security services. So into this kind of corporate hellscape that we're very familiar with from Cyberpunk comes this intrusion of flux from somewhere else. Is it, just a downside of living in this future world? Is it a purely environmental effect? Or is it some sort of sinister force with dire motivations? Who can say? But the Night Watch, which, as I said before, the game in its core book largely assumes that you'll be a member of in one way or another, is set up to oppose eruptions of the flux and to deal with the horrible mutations and monstrous problems that the flux causes. So, when thinking about running Corporia with a new group of people in a new medium, being Discord, I had to give it some thought. What kind of pitch did I want to make? Did I want to go very, very vanilla? This is Corporia. Play anything out of the core book and I'll try and make it work. Did I want to go that approach? Or did I want to make a stronger, more... a stronger pitch carrying more guidance, right? That will enable a good cross-section of experience with Corporia, but leave a lot of things open for the players if they choose to go, buy the game and run it themselves. So they still have lots of interesting things to discover in the Game Master sections, and they have lots of interesting things to do. They won't have that feeling that they've already done it and the game is used up. And I ended up going that route. Rather than having it being a large-scale expose, this is Corporia, this is how it works, that kind of thing. This is one aspect of Corporia. So I asked the players to create a type of character called the Knight Errant. And this is the signature character of the game, really. I think the core idea that sparked the game's creation comes from this option, right? The Knight Errant. And what the Knights Errant are people who have, in one way or another, realized that they are reincarnated knights from just before, during, or at the fall of Arthur. Now, the game has its own ideas about who Arthur was and when Arthur was, and which of the many, many competing tales and traditions about Arthur are true. And so you have the expectation of knights with plate armor, and you have the expectation that Lancelot is real, and this sort of stuff. So we have Merlin, so magic was real in Arthur's day, and so on and so forth. With this understanding of that past Arthur, the game invites us to consider the notion of the once and future king, that in the time of great need, Arthur will be called upon again. Well, this is that time of great need, and heralding his return, hopefully, are these reincarnations. And the company Valiant is doing its best to make contact with them, collect them, help them find their way, and establish them as the Night Watch to to make it so that there is some semblance of a world for Arthur to return to before he does. Otherwise, it's possible it could all fall to chaos, wreck, ruin, mutation, and horrible monster infestation. So maybe what we're looking at is the very, very beginning of the very, very end of days, unless Arthur and his knights can turn that tide. Now, into this game, we have people from our world. And I think it's kind of interesting to ask people to consider bringing forward a medieval mindset and having it interact with, in some way that's fun for them, a modern mindset. You know, like, is that medieval knight very much in control of this modern person that they're playing, so that the modern personality and perspective and training and expectations is fully subverted? Or are we playing an uneasy truce? Or, you know, is this just the beginning of that process and the person is very much a modern character, but with thoughts bubbling up from what may have been a better time? So I think that's all I want to say about Corporia for now, as far as the game goes. Except that it's fun to read. The author's kind of playful. Things have refreshing terms. So it's not, you know, roll your strength plus melee. It's roll your strength plus getting medieval. And we can have conversations in play like, what are you going to do? I'm going to get medieval on that guy, right? So it's very clear that we're attacking with melee weapons. But the system itself is quite simple. Doesn't have a lot of moving parts, but it has, you know, some core principles that we're all familiar with if we've played a number of games, and it has some new things and it has some old things all mixed together, so that you can wind up with an ability to play a combat game with a bunch of all combat characters, with hit locations and escalating levels of injury and different ways to deal with that, such as medical technology and or, you know, the mysterious energies of the flux and or outright magic, and have a lot of room left inside the simple mechanics for, you know, individual choice, individual tactics, and individual personalities to shine. So I'm quite pleased with all of that. It's not too difficult or complicated to run for the first time through Discord. And some of the tools I'm trying to use on Discord is to keep bots to a minimum. So I found one dice bot that's fine. It's not great, but it's fine, and so we'll let that ride for a while. I'm just having people post as themselves. We're not using a bot to change names or anything along those lines. And we're having it so that people can post when it's convenient for them. We're trying to have everybody check the channel daily and then contribute what they can. And then if they are posting out of chronological order as far as what we're imagining goes, but that's when they can post, then it's a simple matter for me to come in at the end of a combat round or a sequence of interactions and just kind of rephrase everything from the Game Master's position in chronological order. So we want it to be as easy to post and as relaxed to post as possible. We're running 3 channels. We have a fully out of character channel where we're talking to each other about whatever, and we have the in character channel for posting what the knights are thinking, doing, and saying. And we have a channel for where we can look for specific rules. As new game elements come up in play, I'm posting little snippets of rules. I'm posting examples of how rolls work and how to interact with the bot, with the dice bot and things like that. And, pinning what is necessary and just, letting things be that aren't. Part of this is making use of the threads feature. So, examples about dice rolls, examples about how skills work, example about how to use the meta currency of the game. These are all in their own separate threads so that they can be easily found, but they don't take up as much screen real estate as when you're going through looking for something. So we're trying all that out, and hopefully it will be fun and a different and or hopefully refreshing experience. I get to drag out some of my university education as I focused very heavily on Arthur as a student. And so being able to, speak from that place of confidence about what it might be like with Arthur's return is enjoyable for me. And seeing this future world with its awkward dance between presenting itself as a utopia, but player experience, of course, being quite different. Seeing how that's going to take shape through the interactions of play is something that I'm greatly anticipating. The team itself is a good mix of personalities, representing a whole gamut of different types of people who might have been attached in one way or another to the dream of Camelot and the dream of the Round Table, either before it came to pass or while it was at its height, but they appreciated it from a distance, not yet qualifying for it, or those who survived long enough to see its inevitable demise. So there's a lot of fruitful ground for role play, with a nice balance for me, at any rate, between certainty, this is what this piece of technology does, or this is what this weapon does, or this is what this, kind of cyber tech augment does, versus the usual freedom that we might expect with exposure to older games of, this is the framework to play inside, but once you grasp what that framework is, we expect you to, improvise and adjudicate and make your rulings over or in the absence of rules. And I like that just fine. So hopefully there'll be more reports about play as things get going. But this segment about Corporia, hopefully more coherent than I think it might have been with the wackiness of traffic around me, is over. Maybe there will be more segments, or maybe this has been arranged to be at the end. Let's find out together. Okay, it's neither fair nor accurate for me to say, let's find out together, because, of course, I'm finding out first. So, this second bonus episode was put together at the same time as the first bonus episode, because initially they were going to be one episode. But anyway, since I released the first bonus episode on Monday, and now I'm about to release this second bonus episode tomorrow, my time, who knows when, your time. Since that has occurred, I've received another call-in, this one also from Jason of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, which gives me the opportunity to say, rather than the original ending of this bonus episode, instead of just segueing to that, I get to say, but wait, there's more.
Hey, Jason here. Really enjoyed that episode, your bonus episode on immersion in horror games. And yeah, I think the hard part there is that ruthlessly cutting scenes and ruthlessly switching scenes and keeping the pace up, not letting players engage in role play. That's not fair to say, but not letting them drag the scene on through the role play. I know as a game master, I enjoy sitting back and watching my characters interact with each other and do that, because it gives the GM a break and it lets you, but in the heart, but if depending what you're going for, being ruthless and switching back and forth and to keep the tension up, not letting them do that is tricky, because you have to not be cruel to the players and not turn them off by switching scenes and cutting them short, but at the same time, so that's the tough balance there. Great episode.
As you point out, Jason, I think the meatiest thing to have a discussion about is the notion of there being some sort of responsibility in the group for changing the scene or altering the situation, like advancing time. In the morning, you all wake up around the campfire and, that kind of thing. And there are some games where, or some periods of play where that can be really shocking, like the first time a group of people who have only ever played with uninterrupted or unaltered flows of time. It can be really shocking that you've jumped over several hours and say, well, wait, I would have done something. Like, well, what? Well, I would have had a conversation about this, and I would have slept for a while, and and you have that discussion about the use of our time. But that's from the the character experience, the in character as character point of view. When we get into play where we have decided that we want to be one step removed from the character and looking at the character like an author, which is not a style of play that I particularly relate to, on a level of total satisfaction, but it's one I understand and one that I have engaged in. When we start moving things forward about the scene because it's a scene, yeah, it can still sometimes ruffle some feathers. There can always be that sense of cutting people off. So, again, it's getting to know the group and getting to know the system and getting to know what we're really looking to get out of the experience and being willing to talk about it afterward, right? Being willing to say, this part was fun, but this part wasn't, and here's why. And letting go of the ego so you can hear the feedback and respond to it effectively. And it's all supposed to be fun, can interfere with that otherwise healthy process. Yeah. So you hit it right on the head. That is the key point, and maybe something we can talk about more deeply and more relevantly with useful examples in the future. But anyway, this brings this episode once more to an end. And so instead of saying, but wait, there's more, we'll get to say, go home. We're finished. Get out. Turn the lights out. Close the door. You've been listening to an episode of the Casting Shadows podcast. If you've made it this far, thank you for your patience, and hopefully, thank you for your attention. And with greater hope still, I hope to interact with you on these topics or the others raised by the podcast, the blog, or the YouTube channel, in all the places in which I can be contacted. You can find a link in the show description. Anyway, until the next time, take care.